Thank you for the kind words, my man. I appreciate it. And this is like kind of like a homecoming, so to speak. I mean, this is everybody in here is part of my village, and I can appreciate that. I'm not gonna get all emotional and everything right now. My brother will laugh at me, but but now I want to really thank you all for all coming out and just listening and sharing and connecting, because you all are all a part of my village. And you know, the African proverb states it takes a village to raise a child, and all of you all are part of that village to help to raise me and my brothers. And so I appreciate you all, and I thank you, and you're all each one of your individual ways. But today we want to talk about making the pursuit of dynamic black fatherhood your personal legend. Making the pursuit of dynamic black fatherhood your personal legend. You know, one of my favorite books of all time is a book called The Alchemist. Has anybody ever read The Alchemist? Anybody? Okay. You know, The Alchemist is by this guy named Paulo Coelho, and this book chronicles the journey of a shepherd boy as he pursues his personal legend. And the personal legend can also be described as your calling in life. And so as he pursues his calling in life, or as he pursues his personal legend, you know, according to the story, it states that the universe conspires to help him along his journey. So as he goes through various challenges, various trials, each time he goes through a trial, he comes to realize that the universe conspires to help him along on his journey. But with our belief structure, we understand that it's not the universe, it's the creator of the universe. It's the creator of the universe that conspires to help you along your journey as you move forward to achieving your personal legend. And so today, I want to briefly talk about why the pursuit of dynamic black fatherhood should be the personal legend of all of us here in the room. And again, as you pursue, remember, when you pursue, the universe, or the creator of the universe conspires to help you along your journey. Now, one of the things that I want you to think about is this. I know there are some ladies in the room, and there's some brothers that might not be fathers in the room. So why should the dynamic black fatherhood manifesto, or why should this pursuit be a pursuit of yours? But I want you to think about this. As a lady, in some way, shape, or form, you are connected to a dynamic black father. You're married to one. You're dating one. You're the daughter of one. You're the mother of one. You are connected to a black father in some way, shape, or form. And as I mentioned before, you all are a part of that man's village. We can't become the best versions of ourselves without your help. It takes a village to raise a child. But people tend to omit it also takes a village for grown folks to be the best versions of themselves. Nothing was ever created in greatness in isolation. Nothing great was created on an island. It takes a village. So ladies, don't omit the fact that pursuing dynamic black fatherhood should be a personal legend of yours as well. But then the guys who aren't dads now, potentially you will be. But then on the flip side of that, you'll be a mentor, a big brother. You will, in some way, shape, or form, be a father-like figure in the life of a young man or a young woman. So therefore, it is important for you to pursue the personal legend of being a dynamic black father. And so when we stop and think about this, this should be a pursuit that we all are chasing. But first, we have to think about why. Why is the pursuit of being a dynamic black father, why is that pursuit so necessary? And I was recently sharing with a brother a few minutes ago. I came across a quote on Facebook not long ago from Nelson Mandela, and it was profound. It stated, "Fools multiply when wise men are silent." Fools multiply when wise men are silent. Nelson Mandela was prophetic when he said that. And based on what I'm seeing in the world, there's a lot of silent brothers out here. Real talk. I mean, we can go political, we can go, I mean, whatever. There's a lot of silence going on. But Nelson Mandela stated, "Fools multiply when wise men are silent." And if you don't believe me, check your social media feed. There's a lot of silence out there. There's a lot of silence out there. But we also have to harness that wisdom that's inside of each one of us, because our journeys bring something to the table that adds wisdom to our society. And we need to step up, and we need to speak out. We need to step up, and we need to speak out. Next, we all have heard this slogan that when America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. That's real. When America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. That is 100% real. When something is impacting America, you can look at us and it's more devastating, right? So when you think about fatherhood, I want you to think about what we're talking about it through that particular lens. Through the lens of when America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. A why. Again, we're talking about why the pursuit of dynamic Black fatherhood should be the personal legend of us all. And then I want to actually jump into 3 quotes and 3 statistics. And these came from the book of Dr. Warren Farrell, and the book's called The Boy Crisis. And these are 3 statistics. Again, I want you to think about them through the lens of Black America gets the flu when America gets a cold. The first one, by the 3rd grade, boys whose fathers were present scored higher on every achievement test. By the 3rd grade, boys scored higher on every achievement test when fathers were present. Again, think about this. When America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. We're more devastated and more impacted by scenarios like this. Think about that. This is another one, again, from Dr. Warren Farrell's book, The Boy Crisis. Living at home without dad is more highly correlated with suicide in children and adolescents than any other factor. Let that set in. Living at home without dad is more highly correlated with suicide in children and adolescents than any other factor. It's not socioeconomics, it's not race, it's not any other factor is more highly correlated. Being at home without dad. Think about that. Again, when America gets the cold, Black America gets the flu. Think about that. Think about what I'm saying through that particular lens. And then finally, this one's going to really hit home. And this one blew my mind when I came across I'm getting tongue-tied. When I came across the statistic, finally, among Black boys, hypertension is reduced by 46% when dad is significantly involved. Think about that. Hypertension. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but there's probably some hypertension medication potentially in the room, maybe. Think about that. Black boys, when dad is significantly involved, hypertension is reduced by 46%. Think about that. Think about that. And so when you marinate on those particular stats through the lens of Black America gets the flu when America gets the cold, that is a why enough. But we could go on. We can go on and on about statistics as to why we should make a change or why we should make the pursuit of dynamic Black fatherhood the personal legend of us all. But we're not. We're going to talk about the how. How do we get to this? How do we get to a point in which we can fix some of these issues? And honestly, it starts with the commitment. It all starts with a commitment. You know, a commitment is simply a promise or a pledge. That's all a commitment is. It's a promise or a pledge, but how many of us are willing to do that? It starts with a promise or a pledge. And once we commit to it, then we have to do it. We have to back it up. And so, you know, one of the ways or one of the things that, you know, I've kind of poured my heart into is my book, Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto, and it revolves around 10 commitments that are essential for excellence in Black fatherhood. It's not about being good, it's about being great. You know, there's an old book that was entitled From Good to Great. It's about us being great. How do we turn excellence into the new standard of Black fatherhood? That's what this thing is all about. And again, if you're not a Black father, I want you to think about this. You're connected to a Black father in some way, shape, or form. You're a part of his village. Your support, your environment that you're creating is all necessary for us to grow into who we're supposed to be in life. So you're needed, you're necessary. And this should be it should be something that you should be pursuing as well. And so you have to encourage him. Your encouragement is vital because at the end of the day, we're all broken individuals, right? We're broken individuals. So therefore we need people who are going to be there to help us, support us, and push us along the way. And so, so let's jump directly into the commitment. Let's jump into the 10 commitments necessary for excellence in Black fatherhood as stated in the Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto. And again, ladies, I want you to think about this from the standpoint of I am committed to supporting a dynamic Black father in reaching these. For the fathers in here or for the potential fathers, I want you to think about the 10 commitments from the standpoint of I am committed to. Okay? Think about this. I want you to think about this through the lens of who you are, because that's the only way we can take action. If we don't approach things through the lens of who we are, we cannot take action on that. So the first one is optimizing my finances. Optimizing my finances. I am committed to optimizing my finances. Now think about this. Everybody has different financial needs, requirements, but finances are needed and required for living. Yeah, we got kids. We understand this. Finances are needed and necessary for the life that we plan to live in life. So we have to figure out a way to optimize that. We have to figure out a way to utilize the gifts, the talents, the skills, the resources that we've been blessed with. You know, if you think about like the story of the talents in the Bible, right? It was 8 talents to be given out, and one person was given 1, one was given 2, and one was given the balance, was given the 5. And after the master came back, the one who had 1 talent just buried it. He didn't do anything with it. That talent was taken away. When you hear the story, it's all theoretical, but I heard someone state it in a way that made sense to me. A talent is a unit of measure. Do you know a talent is about 33 kilograms? And so when you look at 33 kilograms in the value of gold, that's roughly $1.4 million. So when you stop and you think he gave someone $1.4 million, he gave somebody else $4.2 million, and he gave the other one over $10 million, that makes things real to you. What are you using as far as the talents, the gifts, the skills that you have right now? How are you optimizing that? And when it comes to your finances, are you figuring out a way to make best use of the resources that you have? Again, if you have them and you multiply them, you tend to get more. It kind of goes back to the alchemist notion of, as you pursue your personal legend, the creator of the universe conspires to help you along the way. So you kind of get a little bit more. Whereas if you don't optimize, what happens? It's gone. So number 1, optimizing my finances. As a dynamic black father, I am committed to optimizing my finances. Number 2, I'm committed to continuously nurturing my interpersonal relationships. Continuously nurturing my interpersonal relationships. Think about this. We all grow and develop. We grow and develop. I'm not the same man at 38 as I was when I was 28, or as Jarrell and I were back in middle school when I was 12. We're not the same anymore. My wife and I, when we met 14 years ago, the things that she liked back then, she might not like anymore. We have to continuously nurture those interpersonal relationships. You know, one of the things I shared in the book was a conversation I had with a former mentor of mine. And he had actually went through a divorce not long ago after being married for 25 years. He went through a divorce. And this is right when I got married. And I asked him some words of advice, as I move into marriage and, life with a wife and all of that. And he mentioned to me, he said, Mike, I'm going to give you one piece of advice, and I want you to hold on to it. And I was like, well, what is that? He said, Mike, I want to make sure that you reintroduce yourself to your wife every so often. Reintroduce yourself to your wife every so often, because people change. We develop, we grow. Things that we used to like, we don't like anymore. I used to not like Brussels sprouts. Now I love them when they cooked a certain way. We got but I mean, we have to think about that. So when we think about our interpersonal relationships with our spouse, but then also with our kids grow and develop. The things that worked with your kid when they were 5 is not going to work when they're 15, or when they're 25, or when they're 35, or when they're 45. It's not going to work. So we have to continuously reintroduce ourselves to the folks in our life. All interpersonal relationships, whether they be work, friends, family, kids, spouse, we must do so if we are going to be dynamic in our growth and our development, because we all change, we all grow, but we have to recognize that. The third point, I'm committed to developing effective communication skills. If you really take a step back and pull the layers back on a lot of issues we face in life, a lot of the issues stem from misinterpretation. A lot of them stem from misinterpretation and miscommunication. And so when we think about developing effective communication skills, it's not about being able to speak like Michael Eric Dyson. We don't have to have, ACT words in every sentence that we use and, have perfect diction. Effective communication is not the words that you use. It's about the impact that they have. So I might use words in one setting that work. In another setting, I might use something that doesn't work, right? So we have to think about developing effective communication skills. And part of that is really taking time to understand the audience or the person that you're speaking to. Because if we don't pay attention to that and we try to use one language, then It's like trying to speak Chinese to someone when you're in Bangladesh. It's not going to work. You have to be mindful of that, developing effective communication skills. And so when we're speaking to our kids, we have to understand their language. When we're speaking to our spouse, we have to understand their language. When we're speaking to, when we're in the church or we're speaking to young people, we have to understand their language. It's interesting. When we think about effective communication skills, it always comes back. It was a line. The Fugees had an album called The Score back in 1996. And one of the tracks on the score was called Zealots. And Lauryn Hill, to me, had one of the most profound lines in that. And it was fascinating because she dropped a lot of information and knowledge that was, insightful and full of wisdom. And at the end of the line, she said, now after all my logic and my theory, I add and she used an expletive, so you ignorant brothers hear me. She was very astute in understanding that, you know what? I have to throw an expletive in here so that you ignorant brothers hear what I'm talking about. Pay attention to it. It's funny, but it's real. Sometimes we criticize how people say things and what they do and what they wear and all of that. But if I'm trying to connect to you, remember, effective communication is about impact. I'm not going to impact, the country music, whatever, dropping lines from Jay-Z and everything. They're not going to understand that. I better start talking about Old Yeller and, you have to think about that. Effective communication is about impact. So if we want to be dynamic, if we want to pursue the notion of being a dynamic black father, we have to be mindful of how we communicate. And it's not about the diction. Again, it's not about being Michael Eric Dyson. He's cool and everything, if you're speaking to that crowd, but it's about having impact. So let's jump into number 4. I am committed to confidently believing in myself. That's something that plagues a lot of us. We don't believe that we can do it. We don't believe that we're gifted with enough. When we look in the mirror, we should realize that we are enough. We have enough that's necessary to do what it is we're supposed to do in life. But if I don't believe in myself, how can I expect any of you all to believe in me? And the thing is, when I look at my kids and I look at the young ones that are up behind us and they're coming up, if they don't see us believing in ourselves, how are they going to believe in themselves? Because kids very rarely do what they're told. Kids rarely do what they're told, but they almost always will repeat what they see. They will mimic what they see. And so he sees me doing this stuff all the time. So I'm not doing it right now, but he sees me doing it. And so we have to be mindful of that. And so when we believe in ourselves, when the kids see us believing in ourselves, they then have the opportunity, or they have the model set for them to believe in themselves. We have to do that. We have to do that. And, the next one, I'm committed to continuous mental, physical, and emotional development. Continuous mental, physical, and emotional development. Development, there's no end game to it. We should be continuously developing, right? It's either you're growing or you're what? There you go. We have to be continuous, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So mentally, what are we doing to challenge our minds? When the kids see me reading, or when they see mommy reading, that inspires them to want to go pick up a book and read something, right? But then from an emotional perspective, how do we handle things? Are we challenging ourselves to grow emotionally? As men, it's hard, right? Because we're supposed to be tough. Like, we're not supposed to cry. We're supposed to, stand up and fight and do what we have to do. But we have to figure out a way to harness our emotions. And if we don't do that, if we're not in continuous development of that, things are going to happen. It was interesting. I was at the gym one day, and it's a brother that's a fireman. And they had just had a tragedy in Knoxville where there was, I think, an accident where all the first responders got there. And it was a pretty horrific scenario. And I was asking the fireman, how he was dealing with that. And he was saying that, they were going through some emotional training on the back end. And I asked him, I was like, do you all get offered any potential emotional support to prepare for things that you might see? And he was just like, that's not something that's suggested to us. And so I'm thinking about it. Everything is in essence reactionary. Whereas if you prepare for it, if you set yourself up for what you're going to see, because if you ain't seen it yet, you're probably going to. You got to prepare for this. So the continuous mental, physical, and emotional development is something that we all need to be mindful of, because at the end of the day, it's no end point to this. Because if you're not growing, you're what? That's right. We have to continuously be growing, and don't use the excuse of, oh, I'm up in age. No, you got to continue to grow. You're here. That's a start. So you got to do something with that. All right. Next, I'm committed to traveling and exposing myself and my family to new ideas and experiences. You know, travel is so important because travel helps you to open up your mind to things that you're not usually exposed to. It helps to flip your preconceived perceptions on their side. It helps you to see things in a different light, but then it also puts you in uncomfortable scenarios in which you then start to develop empathy and understanding for others. And the thing about travel is interesting because people automatically think travel has to, be a half around the world trip somewhere exotic and you got to spend tens of thousands of dollars. You don't have to do that. You can travel to a park you've never seen before. There's a lot of us in here that live in Augusta, that have been in Augusta for their whole life, and I bet you there's probably 10 parks you've never seen before. There's probably, 10 games you've never gone to. There's probably 10 events that you've never experienced. You can travel in your own city. Travel is just opening yourself up to an opportunity that's different. It helps you to see things differently. It helps you to develop empathy, to develop understanding. That's what it's all about. But it's also about exposing you to new ideas. Again, it's learning. New ideas. How do you grow? How do you develop? How do you challenge your current thinking? We have to do that, but we have to be committed to it. Again, if you have the ability to travel the world, travel the world. Go to uncomfortable settings. Expose yourself to stuff that you're not used to seeing. It's a good thing. You develop empathy and understanding. But if not, travel to a park you've never seen before. Take your kids to a movie theater on the other side of town just because. But travel. I'm committed to traveling and exposing myself and my family to new ideas and experiences. Number 7, I'm almost done. We're not going to be here too much longer. I know how. 7, I'm committed to giving my resources, expertise, and time to others. We have to be focused on giving. Some of us are blessed to have dad at home. Others don't. So therefore, we have to step up and give our time, our expertise, and our resources to others. Some of us have time. We need to just give our time to others. Some of us have more resources than time. We need to give our resources to others. Either way, as a dynamic black father, it's my job to be the father in the community. It's my job to be that example. I was talking to a brother recently, and he was referencing how Charles Barkley said back in the day famously, I'm not your role model. I would challenge that. As a dynamic black father, I should want to be your role model. I'm not perfect. I'm very far from it. Very far from it. I don't know if you all have seen the movie 8 Mile, but in the very end of 8 Mile, 8 Mile is a battle rap movie. And at the very end of 8 Miles, for those that haven't seen it, it's all about doing battle raps in which I'm talking about you and you're talking about me and all of that. But the guy at the very end of it did something that was so profound. He basically stood up there and he told the world everything that was wrong about him. He told the world everything that was wrong about himself. And then he tossed the mic to the guy and said, now, go tell them something they don't already know about me. He controlled the narrative. He controlled the narrative. So at the end of the day, we don't have to be perfect, but we do have to be honest about who we are, and we have to control the narrative. And if we control the narrative, then we control what gets put out there. But we definitely have to give our time, our resources, and our expertise to others, but don't use the fact that I'm not perfect as an excuse, because none of us are perfect. It's all good. None of us are perfect. Once you sit down and really talk to folks in very high places, and you're just like, wow, it lets you know that, you know what, okay, it's okay. We're not perfect, and the ones coming up behind you won't be perfect either. But it's okay. You met those challenges for a reason so that you can serve as an example for those that are coming behind you. Everything that you meet is not necessarily for you. Sometimes it's for those that are coming behind you. Be mindful of that. As a dynamic black father, I'm committed to being truthful and living with integrity. Again, we have to be straightforward. We have to be straight up. And we have to live with integrity. So being truthful is what I say. Integrity is basically making what I do match what I say. Being truthful is what I say. Having integrity is making what I do match what I say. There's a poem by Langston Hughes entitled Live Your Creed. And it starts with the stanza, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. Powerful. But the last stanza of that is just as powerful. And it states, for I may misunderstand you in the fine advice you give, but there's no misunderstanding how you act and how you live. Being truthful in living with integrity. We have to make our words match our actions. And we don't have to worry about being perfect. Remember, perfection is not a requirement for greatness. It's not. Okay? So I'm committed to being truthful and living with integrity. I'm committed to embracing the changes in life. Look, change is going to happen. That's the only constant. It's going to happen. You know, it's interesting when you, I don't know if any of you all ride motorcycles. I don't, Mom. I don't. But but if you ever paid attention to someone who rides a motorcycle, when they hit a curve, they lean into the curve. Have you ever seen someone try to lean out of a curve? Yeah, they're smart. You have to lean into it. So you're leaning into the change. You're leaning into the challenge. And it's just, to me, that's like a metaphor for how we need to approach life. You lean into it. It goes back to that notion of control. You control it when you lean in. We have a relative that has a sports car, and I remember he let me drive the sports car. It was a Porsche, and it's a rear-wheel drive Porsche. And as you go around a curve, my natural inclination was to come off the gas. He was like, no, when you hit a curve, you better gun it. It's like, huh? He said, you have to gun it because that's how you have control. If you come off of it, then you lose control and you end up fishtailing. So think about the curves in life. Think about the changes in life. You have to lean into it. You have to control that. You have to go into it. But we have to embrace it. We have to openly embrace the changes that are happening, and they're going to happen. The only constant in life is change. Think about that. And last but not least, in the Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto, I am committed to spending time getting to know myself, my history, my issues, my gifts, and my talents. You know, you have to get to know who you are. You have to spend time with yourself. Being by yourself and spending time with yourself are two different things. Being by yourself and spending time with yourself are two different things. I can be by my wife, but I don't learn her until I spend time with her. But the thing is, we do that with other people. We don't do that with ourselves. We don't take time spending time with ourselves. We don't understand the gifts, the talents, the skills that we bring to the table. We don't understand our issues. We don't take time to really dive into our history, our triggers, things that really impact who we are. We don't do that. But to fully understand who we are, we have to spend time with ourselves. Again, being by yourself is not spending time with yourself. It's a difference. You have to spend time with yourself and really understand that and realize that, you know what? I have some good, I have some bad, but that's all me. These are all pieces to the puzzle. A lot of times what we end up doing is we take one piece to the puzzle and allow that one piece to define who we are. One piece. Oh, I am this, or I am that, or I am this. Guess what? Those are 1 or 3 of the 500 pieces that makes up you. And if you ever look at a puzzle piece, you can never look at a puzzle piece and determine what that puzzle is going to come out to be. You can never do that. But a lot of us tend to describe or define ourselves by that one puzzle piece. So what we need to do is make sure to look at all those pieces, know who they are, put them on the big universal puzzle that makes up us to allow that to define who we are in totality. We have to do that. We have to do that. Don't define yourself by 1 or 2 puzzle pieces, because those 1 or 2 puzzle pieces don't make up the whole puzzle. But you have to think about this as well. Without those 1 or 2 pieces, that puzzle's incomplete. So we have to be mindful of that. So again, the 10 commitments as dynamic black fathers I am committed to, as ladies, as men who are not fathers currently right now, you are connected to a dynamic black father. So you are committed to supporting and encouraging that dynamic black father on his journey. And so, and above everything else, we got to keep the Lord involved in everything we do. I mean, that's real. You know, we can talk about practical stuff, but we got to get out the way. I don't know if you all watched recently that the documentary on Quincy Jones. Anybody watch that on Netflix? It was powerful. One of the things that I took away from it, I was sharing it with my mom on the way over here, was I think it's sometime in the 70s, Quincy was he was producing somebody's album. But Quincy said, you know, as I produce something, I always leave 20 to 30% of flexibility so the Lord can move in what I'm making, because that's when the magic happens. So we got to always make sure we leave enough space for him to move, because that's where the magic happens. And as dynamic black fathers, as long as we leave that space for him to move and we're committed, the magic can definitely happen. So if you're committed, I'm committed. Let's make this thing happen. Thank y'all.